Hey guys, tonight we're drifting into something a little more modern, a little more unhinged, and somehow even more relatable than medieval dentistry. We're talking about Seroquel addiction. Yes, that's Serquel. The prescription sleeping pill turned chaos goblin known affectionately on the streets as baby heroin. Which, frankly, already tells you everything you need to know. If a medication has a nickname that sounds like it was invented by a raccoon behind a gas station, you know this story's going to be wild. So before you get too comfortable, go ahead and like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of content. Seriously. Zero pressure. And thank you for suggesting this topic, by the way. It was a fun one to wander through. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Statistically, at least one of you is hearing this at 3:12 a.m. while eating shredded cheese straight from the bag. No judgment. You're safe here. Now dim those lights, switch on a fan, kick your pet off your side of the bed if you must, and settle in. Because tonight we're exploring the life of someone who got just a little too cozy with their prescription bottle. But let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered how someone even discovers that the pill their psychiatrist prescribed is actually strong enough to tranquilize a moose? Or what it feels like when you accidentally take it on an empty stomach and wake up 18 hours later in a different shirt? What happens when you start craving your bedtime sedative like it's the world's sleepiest forbidden fruit? Does your personality slowly shift into that of a Victorian ghost? Do you start cancelling plans because your medication kicked in early again? Does Seroquel turn you into the kind of person who eats 6 bowls of cereal at 1 a.m. and then forgets all of it? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in the horrifying, hilarious, slow-motion meltdown that is the life of a Seroquel addict. The year is well. Technically, it's still whatever year you last remember. But it definitely feels like 1998 here. And you are groggy, confused, and halfway through a snack you do not recall making. Good luck. It all begins innocently enough. A doctor hands you a small white tablet and says, "This will help you sleep." You nod politely, unaware that you're holding the pharmaceutical equivalent of a tranquilizer dart. You take it, lie down, blink once, and suddenly it's 3 days later. Your laundry is mysteriously folded. A bowl of cereal is beside you. A single shoe is in the freezer. Welcome to your origin story. Let's talk about what you expected that night. Maybe you thought you'd drift off gently, like a calm woodland creature in a nature documentary. Maybe you imagined yourself sliding under the covers, closing your eyes, and waking up 8 hours later refreshed, reorganized, and potentially glistening. What you did not anticipate was meeting the pharmaceutical ambassador of unconsciousness, a tiny tablet with the sleeping power of a falling anvil. The moment the pill hits your stomach, something shifts. You feel a subtle heaviness at first, like gravity is casually tightening its grip on your skeleton. Your eyelids go from fully operational to closing time at a dive bar. You tell yourself you still have a good 20 minutes before the medication kicks in. You are wrong. You have maybe 4 minutes. 5 if you are unusually stubborn or still standing up. Then comes the hunger. Not normal hunger, primordial, catastrophic, prehistoric hunger. A hunger that whispers ancient truths into your soul, like you have not eaten enough pita chips to survive the night. You try to resist. You can't. You begin wandering your kitchen in slow motion, opening cabinets you haven't opened in months, rediscovering snacks you didn't even know you purchased. You eat something. Possibly several somethings. You will not remember any of them by morning. Let's take a moment to acknowledge your coordination during this phase of the transformation. Non-existent. Your limbs are suddenly made of warm molasses. You begin leaning on walls that are not actually near you. You move like someone trying to sneak through a house with creaky floors while absolutely failing at both sneaking and standing. Dropping things becomes part of the experience. A spoon, your phone, a philosophical thought you are halfway through forming. And then finally comes the descent. It is not sleep in the typical sense. It is not even napping. It is collapsing gracefully into another realm, like a fainting goat with emotional depth. Your thoughts slow. Your breath deepens. You stare at the ceiling with the profound intensity of someone who has forgotten what ceilings are. And then, darkness. Total, deep, gravity-soaked darkness. When you wake up, time has passed. A concerning amount of it. Entire days have performed a quiet, disappearing act. You sit up in bed with the posture of a confused Victorian child who has just regained consciousness after a fainting spell. The sun is in a different position than you remember. Your phone battery is at 2%. Your hair looks like you survived a hurricane that happened exclusively on your head. This is the moment you notice the strange details. Your bed is made. Your laundry is folded. A bowl of cereal sits next to you like a small offering from an unknown deity. And then, the shoe. You don't know how it got into the freezer. You do not recall walking to the freezer. But there it is, cold, waiting, and somehow emblematic of everything that has just happened to you. You rise slowly, wobbling slightly, moving through your home like an archaeologist exploring a site left behind by a civilization identical to you, but with worse judgment. You check your messages. You missed appointments you forgot existed. You open your fridge. You discover you ate half a block of cheese in a trance-like state. You shrug. It feels correct. By the time the fog lifts, you're left with one thought. What was that? This blurry, baffling, mildly haunting night is how Serquel begins its reign in your life. A gentle introduction, a soft hello, and a powerful demonstration that from now on, your nights will not belong to you. They will belong to the pill. Welcome. The journey has just begun. About a week in, you notice something strange. The moment Serquel hits your bloodstream, your stomach transforms into a black hole. You could devour a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, a frozen pizza, and possibly the pizza box. You're not eating, you're foraging, like a sleepy medieval peasant who just discovered fire. Let's talk about that moment, the moment you realise something inside you has awakened. Not spiritually, not emotionally, but gastronomically. You don't just want food. You need it the way a dragon needs gold or a toddler needs chaos. Your hunger bypasses logic entirely. You're standing in your kitchen, blinking at a package of tortillas as though they've personally offended you by existing uneaten. It starts small. You think, maybe I'll have a light snack, something gentle, delicate, respectable, a cracker, a handful of cereal, something a nutritionist might nod approvingly at. But Serquel has other plans. You eat one cracker and suddenly your brain says, good, now eat everything else in the house. You open cabinets like you're checking escape routes, scanning shelves with the intensity of someone looking for evidence. Before long you find yourself creating strange combinations, culinary crimes really. A spoonful of peanut butter topped with granola and 3 chocolate chips. A slice of cheese wrapped around a pickle like an edible sleeping bag. Chips dipped into applesauce. You're not eating for pleasure. You're eating because the laws of the universe have broken down and you must consume to restore balance. Let's not forget the speed. You're eating quickly, ferociously, as if someone is about to take the food away, even though the only other living being in your home is a houseplant and it's not judging you out loud. You stand hunched over the counter, shoveling handfuls of whatever into your mouth with the determination of a contestant on a game show no one asked you to be on. And the worst part, you are both fully present and completely absent. You're aware enough to chew, but not awake enough to question why you're holding a spoon in one hand and a bag of shredded cheese in the other. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a tiny voice whispers, "This seems excessive." But the louder voice, the Serquel voice, says, "Shh, eat more bread." Now let's talk about texture. When you're this hungry, texture stops mattering. Cold spaghetti straight from the container? Perfect. Dry cereal. Delicious. That leftover piece of chicken you meant to throw away 2 days ago? Exquisite. Your standards plummet. Food becomes primal, urgent, important. You chew with purpose. Eventually, however, the fog of consumption begins to lift. You find yourself surrounded by debris. An open jar here, a torn package there, crumbs scattered across the counter in a gentle, shameful snowfall. You don't remember making these messes, but you absolutely made them. You try to recall the order of events. Did you start with the bread? Or was it the yogurt? Why is the peanut butter on the stove? Why is the stove on? Once the hunger recedes, you become aware of your surroundings again, aware enough to shuffle back to bed like a guilty raccoon caught underneath a porch light. You tell yourself you'll clean the kitchen in the morning. You won't, but the promise feels comforting. The next day, you wake up and wander into the kitchen, only to be confronted by the archaeological record of your nocturnal buffet. The evidence is everywhere. A spoon welded to a plate by dried syrup, a half-eaten granola bar resting peacefully on top of the toaster, crumbs outlining the exact spot where you leaned your elbows on the counter, like some kind of snack-powered detective. This is when you finally admit the truth. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a one-time lapse. It's a pattern now, a ritual, a nightly migration to the feeding grounds. Congratulations, you're officially in the Serquel hunger era, and it only gets weirder from here. Normal humans sleep horizontally. Serquel sleepers defy geometry. One morning you wake up diagonally across the bed, feet on the nightstand, face in a hoodie you don't own. Another time you wake curled around a cereal box like it's your emotional support animal. At this point, gravity is merely a suggestion. Let's take a moment to appreciate what's happening here. You didn't simply sleep. No, you temporarily exited the physical plane. While ordinary sleepers drift gently through REM cycles like peaceful koalas, you, under the influence of Serquel, enter a nightly wormhole where the laws of matter rearrange themselves around your unconscious body. Einstein would tilt his head at you. NASA would ask questions. You begin each night with good intentions, lying neatly on your mattress, head on the pillow, limbs aligned in a respectable human configuration. You pull the blankets around you like a responsible adult preparing for rest. But once the medication begins its slow takeover, your body becomes a wandering celestial object. You turn over once, twice, 12 times. You drift, you rotate, you bend in ways the average chiropractor would faint witnessing, and you do not wake up during these movements, not once. You could roll over an entire suitcase and remain unaware. Your bed frame could collapse and you would continue resting in the debris like a very peaceful possum. Some mornings, you wake to find your pillow on the floor, your blanket wrapped around your foot like a tourniquet, and your torso halfway off the mattress, suspended impossibly by something physics would describe as none of our business. Other mornings, you discover you're sleeping upside down, your head where your feet should be, your feet dangerously close to knocking over your bedside lamp. You don't remember rotating 180 degrees in your sleep, but clearly you did. You've become a slow-moving hurricane of limbs. Then there's the mysterious objects you incorporate into your sleeping posture. It's never anything normal, like a second pillow. It's always something unhinged. A shoe, a towel, a half-eaten granola bar, a remote control you're gripping as though it holds the secrets of the universe. Once you wake up hugging a cereal box, arms wrapped around it with intimate devotion, cheek pressed lovingly against the branding. You don't even like that cereal, and yet here you are, clinging to it like a Victorian widow embracing a framed portrait. Let's talk sensory details. There is always one arm numb, completely numb, an entire limb that seems to have resigned from its responsibilities during the night. You shake it gently, waiting for the pins and needles storm to begin. Your neck feels like you slept on a brick. Your lower back sounds like a bag of microwave popcorn. Your knees have pressed themselves into weird angles known only to professional contortionists, and yet despite all this you slept. Deeply. Almost too deeply. You have the satisfying but unsettling feeling of someone who has been unconscious, possibly medically, and is now re-entering a world that kept going without them. The first thing you do after waking is try to piece together the puzzle of your positioning. You stare at the angle of your legs, the placement of your arms, the direction your head is facing, and attempt to reverse engineer the sequence of events that led to this configuration. It's like waking up at the end of a crime scene and trying to guess what happened. At a certain point you stop trying, because frankly, you're not ready to grapple with the possibility that you slept folded in half like a lawn chair. Moving out of bed becomes its own adventure. You must untangle yourself from the sheets, separate your limbs from the hoodie you apparently absorbed into your sleeping form, and locate your missing sock, which is almost always halfway across the room. Standing up feels like resurrecting yourself. Then there's the emotional aftermath. Part amusement, part confusion, part acceptance. You shrug. Sure, you think. That's where my leg goes now. This is who I am. Because Seroquel sleep isn't about elegance. It isn't about posture. It's about surrendering your physical dignity to a night of unknowable acrobatics. By the time you walk into the kitchen, still half bent from whatever origami pose you slept in, you already know tonight will be the same. You will lie down neatly, respectfully. You will make plans, and within minutes of drifting off, your body will once again defy physics, geometry, and the general expectations of vertebrates everywhere. Welcome to your new normal, sleeper's performance art. You take your dose at 9:30 p.m. You close your eyes, you reopen them to discover it is now 3:47 p.m. The next day, you have missed 2 calls, 4 texts, and possibly an entire holiday. You're now experiencing Seroquel Standard Time, where the days are longer, but somehow you are not. At first, you don't fully grasp what has happened. You lie there blinking at the sunlight slanting through your window, trying to remember whether it's morning, afternoon, or a hallucination you're about to negotiate with. Your mouth is dry, dessert dry, like you've been storing sand in it overnight. Your bones feel heavier than they were yesterday, as if your skeleton quietly doubled its emotional burden while you slept. Slowly, you sit up, or try to. Sitting up after a Seroquel marathon nap is like trying to lift a medieval portcullis using only your neck muscles. Everything in your body protests. Your hair goes in every direction at once, determined to tell its own story. Your joints creak like you've aged 50 years in one night. And honestly, you might have. Let's talk sensory experience. The air feels thick. Time feels thick. You feel thick. There's a haze around your vision, as though you're waking up inside a soft-focused documentary about endangered tortoises. Your brain, meanwhile, is booting up one corrupted file at a time. You think a thought, and it echoes in slow motion. Where am I? What year is it? Once you muster the strength to lift your phone, you're greeted with a digital crime scene. Missed calls, messages from people checking in like you survived a minor natural disaster. Notifications stacked so high, it looks like your phone tried desperately to get your attention for 18 consecutive hours and eventually gave up to mourn your loss. You scroll, confused. You see texts asking, "Are you awake? Hello? Did you forget we were meeting?" And then finally, "Okay, I'm assuming you're asleep again." You want to reply, you really do, but your thumbs are still partially asleep. They move like soggy breadsticks. You consider sending a voice note, but the idea of forming a coherent sentence feels ambitious. You put the phone down. Recovery takes precedence. When you finally attempt to stand, you realize your legs have forgotten their job descriptions. You wobble like a newborn deer, encountering gravity for the first time. The room tilts slightly, not enough to be alarming. but enough to remind you that you are still operating at 40% consciousness. As you shuffle toward the kitchen, you begin to piece together the lost day, the untouched breakfast ingredients, the unread reminders, the fresh layer of dust on your good intentions. You open the fridge and stare blankly inside, not because you're hungry, but because you've forgotten what humans do after waking. Eventually the hunger kicks in, that deep, cavernous Serquel hunger, and you eat. Slowly, half-heartedly, still half dreaming. But the true shock comes later, when you notice the date, the actual date, the date that makes you realize you didn't just nap, you time-traveled, you skipped a day, you performed an involuntary spiritual retreat without the benefit of reflection. Somewhere out there, the world kept moving, and you remained perfectly still, cocooned in fabric and pharmaceutical cloudiness. And strangely, you feel peaceful. Not well rested, not energized, but oddly serene, because there is something humbling about being sedated so thoroughly that time simply gives up on you. Something calming about being forced, gently, insistently to stop. By evening, as you slowly regain your ability to form human thoughts, you realize you've crossed a threshold. There is your old life, where naps lasted 30 to 40 minutes, and then there is your Serquel life, where naps last epochs. From now on, every time you close your eyes after taking that tiny white tablet, you know one thing for certain: you're not going to bed. You're entering a coma with a flexible end date. Welcome to the long sleep era. It changes you, it humbles you, and you will absolutely do it again tomorrow. Suddenly, all decisions revolve around when the pill kicks in. Want to leave the house? Better not be after 8:04 p.m. Want to start a movie? Absolutely not, unless you enjoy waking up halfway through to the Netflix. Are you still watching? Judgment screen. Your social life becomes a series of cancellations with the same explanation. I'm so sorry. My medication activated. This is the moment your entire lifestyle quietly shifts from adult with free will to tired Victorian governess who must retire promptly at sundown. Every plan, every outing, every fleeting desire to experience life outside your apartment becomes a risky gamble against the unstoppable countdown of chemical sedation. Once the pill hits your stomach, the clock begins ticking, and you suddenly understand what Cinderella felt like, except instead of turning into a pumpkin, you turn into a drowsy sloth sliding down a couch. Let's start with evening invitations. Someone texts, "Want to grab dinner at 7:30? You stare at the message, calculating like an ancient astronomer predicting an eclipse. Dinner at 7:30 means getting home at 9:15. Getting home at 9:15 means taking your pill at 9:16. Taking your pill at 9:16 means being awake until 10:02 in a state of heavy existential molasses. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. You politely decline with a phrase that has now become your personal motto. It's a little late for me. And then there are movies. Oh, the movies you once loved. Remember choosing films based on interest, genre, trailers? Now you choose movies based on runtime. If it's longer than 84 minutes, it becomes a documentary about surrender. You press play, thinking you'll get through at least half. But when the Serquel fog descends, it does not care if you're mid-scene, mid-plot twist or mid-popcorn. You will wake up 3 hours later to the credits loop, drool on your chins, and a strong suspicion that everyone in the movie died, even if it was a rom-com. Your friends want to meet at 80 p.m. for drinks. Cute, adorable, absolutely unrealistic. 8 o'clock is practically midnight in Serquel Standard Time. You might as well ask a medieval peasant to join you for brunch in Dubai. Not happening. You consider attending, you even fantasize about attending, but you know the truth. The pill waits for no one. If you attempt to push your bedtime window, even slightly, your entire body revolts. Your limbs go heavy, your eyelids droop. You begin speaking slower, softer, like a wise tree in a children's movie. let's talk about the kick-in window, that sacred 30 to 45 minutes where you must position yourself within 6 feet of a bed, couch, or other soft surface. During this interval, you become hyper-aware of time in a way you have never been before. You glance at clocks constantly, you pace, you brush your teeth with the urgency of someone preparing for hibernation. The moment you sense the first wave of sleepiness, just the tiniest shift behind your eyes, you know your window is closing. Failure to reach your bed in time results in catastrophic consequences, including but not limited to sleeping upright, sleeping sideways, sleeping on the floor, or waking up with a half-eaten granola bar in your hand. Even mundane chores become strategic operations. Do you start laundry at 7:45? No, that is irresponsible. Do you take a shower at 8:10? Reckless. The chances of falling asleep in the shower like a sedated woodland creature increase by 400%. You learn to make choices simply based on how long they take. If it requires more than 12 minutes, it must wait until morning. And social life evaporates. You begin sending messages like, could we maybe do brunch instead? How do we feel about 4 p.m. hangouts? Is there a version of friendship that happens exclusively before sunset? People begin to think you're avoiding them. But you're not avoiding them. You're avoiding unintentionally losing consciousness in their homes. Eventually you accept your new reality. You embrace it even. You become a person who says things like it's getting late at 6:15 p.m. You schedule your entire existence around an event that lasts 2 seconds, swallowing a pill. Because in the era of Seroquel, bedtime isn't just a routine, it's a lifestyle. You open your fridge and discover 8 yogurts, 3 packs of cheese slices, 2 bags of lettuce, 4 chocolate muffins, and a single cucumber. You didn't buy these things, at least not consciously. Serquel you is a whole different person, one who shops like they're preparing for a blizzard that will last until retirement. At first, you stand there in the soft refrigerator glow, blinking in slow motion as the cold air hits your face. You try to recall when you last visited a grocery store. Yesterday? Last week? Sometime during the Carter administration? There is no answer. Your memory is blank, smooth, polished, like someone wiped it clean with a damp cloth and whispered, "Shh, don't worry about it." It dawns on you that you must have gone shopping after the pill kicked in, which means you operated a motorized cart, or worse, your own legs, while only 40% connected to the physical realm. The idea is terrifying, yet also weirdly impressive. You conducted an entire errand while being spiritually adjacent. Let's talk about the items themselves. The yogurts, for example. 8 of them. Not a normal variety pack. Not flavours anyone would choose willingly. You appear to have purchased 4 strawberry, 3 plain, and 1 mysterious harvest wheat blend. A flavour that should not exist. The cheese slices. 3 full packs of identical processed cheese. You don't even like processed cheese, and yet Serquel you does, passionately. Then there's the lettuce, 2 massive bags, unopened, still crisp. You stare at them with a sense of insult, because you have never in your conscious life purchased that much lettuce. You barely tolerate lettuce. You treat salads as optional, and yet here we are. Lettuce for days, lettuce for weeks, lettuce for a lifestyle you do not live. But nothing confuses you as deeply as the single cucumber. 1. Lone. Cucumber. Not 2. Not a pair. Just 1. Resting proudly in the drawer like an emotional support vegetable. You hold it in your hand and try to imagine the version of yourself who grabbed it. Why this cucumber? What was the vision? What meal did Serquel you imagine? Why were you confident enough to buy produce but not confident enough to commit to more than 1? Then there are the chocolate muffins, 4 of them, a very specific number suggesting intention, planning, a sense of purpose. But knowing you, they were probably grabbed impulsively, half sleep, half hunger, all chaos. You imagine yourself wandering the bakery aisle, eyes half closed, whispering, these will solve everything. The real mystery begins when you spot the receipt on the counter. Your total, unreasonable. The timestamp, concerning. You apparently made this purchase at 10:26 p.m, meaning you were fully under the influence of the Serquel fog while navigating fluorescent aisles, pushing a cart like a confused Victorian orphan, encountering capitalism for the first time. You picture the scene. You drifting down the dairy aisle, squinting at items as though they contain ancient runes. You selecting muffins with the gravitas of a philosopher pondering existence. You moving at a speed so slow that small children passed you. Then comes the moment of self-preservation, the realization that you interacted with a cashier. You handed someone your card. You confirmed your total. You bagged items, all without being awake enough to remember anything. You probably said, "You too," when they told you to have a nice night. You probably swayed slightly, and they probably thought, another adult simply trying their best. Now, back home, you close the fridge gently, as though not to disturb the items you inexplicably acquired. You sigh. You accept your fate. You now own 8 yogurts, 3 packs of cheese, 2 gallons of lettuce, 4 muffins, and a single cucumber. This is your grocery haul. This is your life now. A life curated by Serquel U, who apparently shops with the confidence of a frontier homesteader stocking up for winter. And tomorrow morning, when you eat one of those strange yogurts, you'll whisper a quiet thank you to the version of yourself who embarked on that late-night odyssey. You may not remember it, but Serquel, you had a plan. At some point you look down and realise you haven't worn real pants since the Clinton administration. Jeans? Too risky. Buttons? Absolutely not. Every waking moment is spent in loungewear, sleepwear, or the mysterious category known as clothes I found on the floor but they feel soft. It starts subtly. One day, you choose sweatpants because you're just staying home. The next day, sweatpants again because you might nap later. Then the day after that, you think about wearing jeans, but your legs recoil at the thought, and suddenly you're negotiating with your own wardrobe like a hostage situation. Before long, your dresser is nothing more than a graveyard of structured clothing you no longer recognize. Stiff fabrics, zippers, seams. These have no place in the life of someone who plans their day around sedation. You don't even remember the last time you touched denim. The texture alone feels like punishment, like something medieval peasants would have worn as a dare. And buttons? Buttons are for people who commit to activities, people who have plans, people who don't immediately lose consciousness at 9:47 p.m. The moment Serquel enters your life, anything with a rigid waistband becomes a sworn enemy. Why endure the tyranny of pants that grab you when soft fabric exists? Comfort becomes not just a preference, but a core belief system. Let's talk about the outfits you do wear. Pajama pants with cartoon characters you haven't watched since childhood. Long t-shirts that reach your knees, giving you the silhouette of a Victorian orphan, but with better snacks. Shorts with elastic so stretched they're now held up entirely by hope. Robes that function as both garment and emotional support cape. Socks that do not match, not because you lost the pairs, but because matching requires a level of cognitive clarity you haven't had since the first dose. Then there are the floor clothes, not dirty, not clean, just available, soft, warm from the ambient temperature. You pick them up, give a half-hearted sniff test that means nothing, and slip into them like the human equivalent of a cozy soup. You tell yourself you'll do laundry soon. You won't, but the promise is comforting. What's wild is how natural it becomes. At first you're embarrassed. You think, I should put on real clothes. But then you remember you have nowhere to be. You plan around your pill. You plan around your hunger. You plan around your naps that resemble medically induced comas, and real clothes simply don't fit into this ecosystem. Why wear jeans to walk from your bedroom to the couch? Why wear a belt when gravity is already holding you down more than ever? Eventually, you start going outside in pajamas. Just quick errands, just checking the mail, just grabbing groceries. At first, you justify it. It's late, no one will see me, it's fine if I don't leave the car. But then one day, you find yourself standing in a drugstore aisle, holding a pack of gum while wearing pajama pants with little ducks on them, and you realise you're past the point of no return. Yet somehow you don't mind. There is a strange, peaceful acceptance in knowing you will never again be betrayed by a zipper. Your wardrobe becomes a sanctuary of softness. Your entire aesthetic shifts from person with goals to sleepy woodland creature. You walk differently, slower, looser, like a cat fresh out of a sunbeam. Eventually, even your friends stop commenting, they expect it. You answer the door in pajamas at any hour, and no one blinks. You attend video calls in pajama tops you claim are just comfortable shirts. You become the pajama ambassador of your social circle. And what's left is this quiet truth. Wearing real clothes was never part of who you were, it was part of the illusion. This is the real you, the comfortable you, the soft fabric devotee. Because in the Serquel era, you don't dress for success, you dress for survival, and for naps, mostly naps. Before Serquel, you had preferences, opinions, ambitions. After Serquel, you're basically a houseplant with anxiety. You speak slower, you blink more often, you think deeply about things that do not matter. You begin narrating your own life mentally, like a Victorian orphan in a BBC drama. The shift doesn't happen all at once. It sneaks up on you the way a cat sneaks up on a sleeping bird. Quiet, patient, inevitable. One day you're energized, making plans, contributing thoughts to conversations, and the next day you're leaning against a wall, trying to remember whether you were walking somewhere or just standing there because your body forgot the next step. Your inner monologue becomes strange, poetic, overly dramatic. You'll catch yourself thinking things like, "And so she carried the laundry basket heavy with both garments and regret." Or, "The spoon fell from his tired hand, and he knew soup was not meant for tonight." Nothing is straightforward anymore. Everything feels like a tragedy, narrated softly, with a violin playing in the distance. Your external behaviour changes too. You speak in slow, gentle sentences, as though your words are being carried out of your mouth by a light breeze. Someone asks what you want for dinner. You consider the question too deeply, staring into their eyes like you're weighing the fate of nations. You say, blinking slowly, "I'll get back to you." You never get back to them. Even your facial expressions shift. You used to have micro-expressions, little bursts of emotion. Now your face moves only when necessary, like a Victorian portrait that occasionally comes to life, and blinking. You blink slowly, meaningfully. Your blinks are long enough for people to wonder if you're falling asleep mid-conversation or entering another realm. Let's talk about your motivations. They disappear. Not in a sad way, more in a soft, floaty, I could do tasks, but also why kind of way. You once had hobbies. Now your main hobby is staring at a wall, pondering a single thought like, do ants have dentists? You lose 5 minutes to that thought. 10, maybe. The day slips away. Your responses become vague. People ask, "How are you?" And you say things like, you know," which could mean anything. Could mean you're fine. Could mean you're on the brink of climbing into a cabinet to nap among the pots. They don't know. You don't know. It's ambiguous. It's your new brand. And then there's the emotional intensity, or lack thereof. Serquel doesn't make you emotionless. It makes you emotionally quiet. Feelings arrive like timid guests knocking politely on your mental door. "Hello, it's sadness," they whisper. "May I come in?" And you shrug, half asleep, and say, "Sure." but keep your voice down. Your reactions slow too. Someone tells you a joke, you understand it, you appreciate it, you even enjoy it, but your laugh comes out 5 seconds late, like it had to take the scenic route through your brain before exiting your mouth. Eye contact becomes an Olympic event. You can do it, but only briefly, and only with the level of focus usually reserved for bomb disposal technicians. Mostly you stare gently into the middle distance, lost in a soft haze, your thoughts floating somewhere like dandelion seeds in a light breeze. And let's discuss the introspection. Dear God, the introspection. You reflect on everything, the past, the future, why socks come in pairs, whether squirrels have best friends. You consider writing these thoughts down, but that would require movement, and movement is no longer your specialty. Your personality doesn't disappear, it just drifts, softens, becomes a slightly translucent version of itself. You're still you, technically, but you're the bedtime edition, the low-power mode, the cinematic slow-motion version of a human being. Eventually you accept it. You embrace your new aura. You become the calmest, sleepiest philosopher in the room. People talk, you nod knowingly as though you understand the secrets of life. You don't. You're just too tired to argue. Because on Serquel your personality doesn't vanish. It just takes a nap. A long nap. A very long nap. At 12:47 a.m. you awaken, not fully conscious, but awake enough to roam the kitchen like a mildly enchanted sleepwalker. You eat cereal, you eat crackers, you consider eating soup straight from the can. You will remember none of this. But the crumbs in your bed will tell the tale. The midnight quest for snacks is not a decision. It is an instinct. A primal calling. A soft, blurry urge rising from somewhere deep within your half-sedated soul. You don't truly wake up. You simply transition into a different stage of unconsciousness, the way a computer slips into safe mode. Your eyes open, but your mind stays wrapped in cotton. Your awareness hovers 3 feet behind your body like a faint ghost witnessing your own behaviour. And your first thought, if it can even be called a thought, is hunger. Ancient, unstoppable hunger. Hunger so powerful it could steer a ship. Hunger that overrides dignity, logic, and all known culinary guidelines. You don't decide to get out of bed. You simply find yourself standing, feet cold against the floor, stumbling toward the kitchen like a raccoon with a tax bill. The kitchen at night takes on a strange atmosphere. The refrigerator hum feels louder. The tile feels colder. The overhead light feels too bright, so bright you don't dare turn it on. Instead, you operate in semi-darkness, guided by moonlight and instinct. You reach for familiar shapes, boxes, jars, bags. Labels don't matter. Flavour doesn't matter. Your standards have evaporated. The cereal is first. Dry cereal, eaten by hand, handful after handful, your fingers working like tiny cranes lifting food to your mouth. Then crackers, crumbling softly as you chew. Then something you didn't intend to eat. Maybe a handful of shredded cheese. Maybe a rogue cookie. Maybe a spoonful of peanut butter you barely managed to scoop. You open cabinets for reasons unknown to humanity. You open the fridge just to stare at it, letting cold air pour out like you're browsing for meaning. The strangest part is how slowly you move. Everything is in slow motion. You open a bag of chips with the delicate precision of a bomb technician. You chew thoughtfully as though evaluating each bite for emotional depth. Time becomes syrupy, minutes stretch, reality blurs. You're a snack-seeking monk on a pilgrimage. Occasionally you attempt something more elaborate, something warm, something cooked, but your half-dreaming brain cannot handle it. You stare at the microwave and forget why. You hold a can of soup and debate drinking it cold. You pick up a fork, turn it over in your hand, and then set it down as though concluding it is too advanced for your current mental state. Then comes the wandering. You drift through your kitchen like a loose helium balloon, bumping gently into counters, appliances, occasionally yourself. You forget what you were doing. You eat another cracker to pass the time. You open the same cabinet 3 times in a row. Finally, once the hunger lulls never ends, just lulls, you drift back toward bed. Not intentionally, not strategically. You simply wander that way, crumbs falling from your hands like a trail for future archaeologists. You crawl into bed still chewing, still half asleep, still unaware of your actions, and then instantly you return to unconsciousness. Morning is when the truth reveals itself. You wake up confused, disoriented. Your mouth tastes like a granola bar used as a bookmark. You find crumbs under your pillow, crumbs on your blanket, crumbs in places crumbs should never be. You discover a cracker sleeve tucked beside you. You notice an open box in the kitchen, a spoon on the counter, a cabinet door left ajar like a ghost was searching for treasure. And slowly, so slowly, you piece it together. You went on another midnight quest. You journeyed into the kitchen as a barely lucid creature of instinct, driven not by hunger but by the mysterious Serquel urge to consume carbs at inconvenient hours. You may not remember the quest, but your bed remembers, your stomach remembers, and the missing half bag of cereal definitely remembers. Welcome to the nightly ritual, equal parts haunting and hilarious, of the Serquel snack pilgrim. There is a sacred moment, usually 45 minutes after swallowing the pill, when your brain begins to fold itself like a tired origami crane. You must be in bed before this moment. If you are not, you will fall asleep on a couch, in a chair, or possibly inside a laundry basket. The kick-in window is not a guideline. It is a law of nature, immutable, eternal, written into the very fabric of your existence the moment the prescription bottle entered your home. You learn this quickly, sometimes violently. 1 minute you're upright, functioning, thinking vaguely coherent thoughts. The next minute your brain powers down like a fading street lamp, and gravity becomes a personal enemy. The first time you ignore the window, you do it out of arrogance, pride. You think, I'm fine. I can handle this. I'll just finish this email. That email remains unfinished to this day, because 5 minutes into typing, your hands slow, your vision softens, and suddenly you're waking up 6 hours later with keyboard imprints on your cheek. Your system crashed without warning. Let's talk about the physical sensations. The kick-in window begins subtly, just a faint warmth behind your eyes, a gentle loosening of your thoughts. Your brain starts sending polite reminders like, hey, maybe get horizontal soon. You ignore these, obviously. And so your brain escalates. Your eyelids get heavier, not metaphorically, physically, as though someone began stacking sandbags atop them. Your limbs feel warm and weighted like you're wearing a lead-lined bathrobe. Your thoughts become slow-motion film reels. You begin blinking in long, luxurious intervals that would make a sloth concerned, and yet you're still upright, still moving, still pretending you have control. Then comes the shift, the moment where the universe whispers, it's time. Your cognitive functions pack their bags and head home for the night. Your coordination dissolves. You begin moving in strange arcs, floating towards surfaces that look even vaguely soft. A couch becomes a cloud. A kitchen rug becomes a mattress. A pile of laundry becomes a tempting terrain of accidental napping. If you're lucky, you make it to the bed. If you're not, you fall asleep mid-motion, sometimes sitting, sometimes halfway through standing, sometimes in a location so bizarre that even future you, upon waking, questions whether you were attempting performance art. Let's walk through the scenarios. You sit down just for a second. You tell yourself you'll get up in a moment and walk to bed. Instead, the moment you touch those cushions, your body shuts down like someone unplugged you from the wall. You wake later with a stiff neck and a blanket you do not remember retrieving. You're eating a post-pill snack, of course, and halfway through chewing you realise you're asleep with a cracker dangling from your hand. Your head is tilted, your mouth slightly open in mid-bite. You look like a paused video. You bend down to pick up a towel and never stand again. You fold yourself into the basket like a very tired house cat and remain there until dawn. After a few of these moments, you begin to fear the window. Not fear in a dramatic sense, more like the gentle, respectful fear one has toward electricity or wild animals. You learn to prepare. You become strategic. 30 minutes after taking your pill, you stop tasks. You enter bed proximity mode. You brush your teeth early. You plug in your phone. You place your cup of water on the nightstand with reverence. You lie down before the kick-in window even begins, because you know deep in your bones that once the window opens there is no negotiating. The pill does not ask. It announces. It declares. It demands horizontal compliance. And if you resist, the consequences are immediate, humiliating, and often involve waking up in a position normally reserved for cartoon characters after they've been bonked on the head. Eventually the window becomes your quiet ritual, a signal, a countdown to oblivion, a reminder that you have perhaps 5 minutes left before your consciousness dissolves like sugar in warm water. And in a strange way, it's comforting, because no matter how chaotic life becomes, no matter how stressful your day was, there is always one constant you can depend on. When Serquel decides it's bedtime, it's bedtime. You wake up with a dry mouth, a heavy skull, and the vague emotional energy of a raccoon who has been chased out of someone's garage. Every limb weighs 40 pounds. Your brain boots up like an old computer that sighs before loading. The Serquel hangover is not a normal hangover. It is not caused by fun. It is not the aftermath of a night filled with laughter, questionable decisions and loud music. No, this hangover is the result of doing absolutely nothing except lying down and being chemically tranquilized into a coma. It's a punishment for sleeping too hard. Let's start with the dryness. Your mouth is a desert, a barren wasteland, a chalkboard in a drought. It feels as though you spent the night gnawing on cotton balls in disappointment. Your tongue is practically glued to the roof of your mouth. You sit up and immediately begin searching for water like a confused explorer lost in your own bedroom. You drink too quickly. You choke a little. This is the first ritual of the Serquel morning. Then your head joins the conversation. It doesn't hurt exactly, it thuds. A low, dull, echoing weight, like someone gently tapped your skull with a sandbag. You tilt your head to the left, heavy. You tilt it to the right, still heavy. You're a bobblehead whose spring has rusted. Your eyes do not open normally, they peel open, slowly, reluctantly, as though waking up is a favour you owe someone and you're not happy about it. Light enters the room like an uninvited guest. You flinch, you squint, you engage in deep negotiations with your eyelids, who insist they are not ready for this level of brightness. Then the real challenge begins, getting out of bed. Your body resists, not emotionally, physically. Your limbs weigh so much you briefly wonder whether your bones secretly absorbed lead overnight. You lift an arm and immediately regret it. You swing your legs to the side and pause halfway because your thighs have gone on strike. Standing up feels like learning to walk again after choosing the hard mode setting. And your brain is not helpful. It is running on a single flickering bulb in the back of a dusty storage room. Every thought arrives late. You ask yourself, what day is it? And your brain responds, loading. You try to form a plan for the morning, but the only thought it offers is, sit, maybe breathe. You shuffle to the mirror, catching your reflection with the shock of someone who expected to see a functional adult, but instead sees a cryptid who lives behind a diner. Your hair is chaotic. Your eyelids droop at uneven angles. You look like you're recovering from both emotional trauma and hibernation. Then comes the emotional hangover. Not sadness, not joy, just fog. A muted, blurry mood. You feel like you're made of muted colours. Conversations sound far away. The world feels too loud, too bright, too crisp. People talk to you and you nod slowly, not because you understand, but because nodding requires less effort than thinking. Breakfast becomes its own adventure. You stare at food like you've forgotten how it works. You try to pour cereal but misjudge the angle. You toast bread and watch it slowly rise from the toaster as though witnessing a religious event. You drop things because your grip strength is at vacation level. Despite all of this, the Seroquel hangover is not painful, it's comical, it's absurd. It's like your body is still buffering while the rest of the world runs at full speed. You move through the morning in slow motion, like you're underwater or reenacting a dream sequence no one asked for. Eventually, hours later, your brain starts to warm up. The lights flicker, the computers hum, the fog lifts. You feel human again, though a slightly creased version of yourself. And every time you experience the Seroquel hangover, you swear you'll take your pill earlier next time. You won't. You never will. But the intention is comforting. You once had a circadian rhythm. Now you have a Seroquel rhythm. Days blur, nights dissolve, weekends vanish. You exist in a slow, syrupy timeline where everything feels slightly delayed, like the universe is buffering. This realization doesn't come all at once. It arrives quietly, the way fog rolls in, soft, sneaky, and suddenly everywhere. One morning you wake up at 3 p.m. and think, strange but okay. Another morning you wake up at 11 a.m. with the confidence of someone who believes they fixed their schedule. Then the next morning, noon. The morning after that, 4:12 p.m. You begin to understand that time as you once knew it has abandoned you. Your life no longer operates in 24-hour cycles. You live in episodes, segments, chapters. You sleep when the pill tells you to sleep, wake when your body has completed its medically mandated hibernation, and drift through the rest of the day like a ghost wearing pajama pants. Let's talk about mornings, though morning becomes a philosophical concept rather than a measurable period. You wake up and immediately have to guess what time it is because your body gives you no indication. Light coming through the window, could be sunrise, could be sunset, could be a neighbour's car headlights. You check your phone. The number shocks you every time. It doesn't matter what it says. It is always wrong. You are always wrong. Once you're up, the day moves slower. Much slower. Your thoughts wander through your mind like cows grazing in an open field. You try to do something productive, anything, but every action feels like pulling yourself through molasses. Brushing your teeth feels like an odyssey. Making coffee feels like an entire season of a prestige drama. Folding laundry feels like a historical reenactment of suffering. And yet somehow, paradoxically, entire hours vanish without your permission. You blink and 2 hours are gone. You stare at a wall thinking about absolutely nothing, and when you snap out of it, a significant portion of your life has evaporated. You are not busy. You are not distracted. You simply existed in a soft, drowsy time warp. Then comes the moment you try to schedule something. Anything. A lunch with a friend, a phone call, a meeting. You open your calendar, stare at the dates, and realize they mean nothing to you now. You tentatively choose a time, say 1 p.m., but you know deep down that 1 p.m. is a suggestion, a rumor, a cultural myth. You might be awake, you might be asleep, you might be wandering your kitchen, chewing dry cereal, contemplating why spoons seem emotionally distant today. You begin using phrases like sometime in the afternoon or let's aim for early-ish evening. knowing full well that your version of afternoon begins when most people are wrapping up work, and your version of evening starts whenever the pill begins tapping you gently on the shoulder. Let's not forget weekends. Weekends vanish entirely. They blend seamlessly into weekdays, becoming nothing more than additional opportunities for naps that last too long, and meals eaten at times no nutritionist would endorse. Monday feels like Friday, feels like Sunday, feels like the inside of a dream you only half remember. Your internal clock used to be reliable. Now it is a whimsical artist, free-working abstract interpretations of time and handing them to you like, "Here, I made this." You accept each one with gratitude and confusion. Eventually, and this is the pivotal moment, you stop fighting it. You stop trying to control your sleep. You stop panicking when you wake up at bizarre hours. You stop forcing your body to conform to schedules only meaningful to the non-sedated. Instead, you adapt. You learn to live in the spaces between hours, in the soft pockets of time that stretch and shrink without warning. You stop saying today and start saying whenever I wake up next. You become someone who eats breakfast at 5 p.m. and considers it a win. Someone who naps at 11 a.m. because last night's sleep didn't fully count. Someone who views clocks not as guides, but as decorative suggestions. And when that acceptance settles in, you finally understand. Time is no longer your boss. Seroquel is. And honestly, it's easier this way. You wouldn't normally dip bread into peanut butter and then roll it in cereal dust. But Seroquel you? Culinary genius. Recipes emerge from the haze, recipes that should never be recreated in daylight. This is the strange gift the medication gives you. Creativity, but only in the culinary sense, and only in the dead of night when your brain is operating on one flickering bulb. You stumble into the kitchen, half awake, half somewhere else, and suddenly you're reinventing the concept of food from scratch, like a medieval cook with access to a pantry and zero supervision. Your recipes don't follow rules. They don't follow flavor profiles or nutritional logic. They follow instinct. Pure, raw instinct. You reach for things that make no sense together, jam and cheese slices, leftover pasta and pretzels, yogurt topped with crushed potato chips, and in that moment, it feels right. You become an alchemist of bad ideas. Let's break down the process. First, there is the gaze. You open the fridge and stare into it with the intensity of someone reading ancient prophecy. The cold air hits your face, your eyes glaze over, and you scan the shelves until something speaks to you spiritually. A slice of bread, a jar of pickles, an open bag of marshmallows, a suspicious tub labelled sour cream or frosting. Not sure. Then comes the selection, which is not selection so much as emotional resonance. You grab whatever item feels correct, which, during this state, is often the exact wrong item. You may pick up a hot sauce bottle even though you fear spicy food. You may choose mustard with the confidence of a chef who knows what they're doing. You do not know what you're doing, but your hands move anyway. Next is assembly, which is a generous word for what actually occurs. This is not cooking, this is piling, stacking, smearing, dumping. You create things that seem theoretically edible but spiritually upsetting. You combine sticky things with crunchy things, salty things with sweet things, wet things with things that should never be wet. A classic example is the peanut butter bread cereal roll, a delicacy created by accident but repeated several times because Serquel you believes repetition equals mastery. Another favourite, pickle nachos, featuring pickles cut unevenly with your poor nighttime motor skills, topped with shredded cheese and hope. The pièce de résistance is something you only remember through vague sensory flashbacks, standing at the counter eating cold spaghetti with a cracker as your utensil. There is no shame, not in the moment. You're guided by something beyond you, some ancient foraging spirit determined to feed you by any means necessary, taste and dignity irrelevant. Then there are the utensils, or rather the lack of them. Half-conscious, you forget utensils exist. Everything is finger food even when it shouldn't be. Soup? Finger food. Yogurt? Finger food. Pasta? Absolutely finger food. You wake up the next morning with tomato sauce on your sleeve and a spoon on the floor, and you wonder how both occurred simultaneously. Let's not ignore presentation, which is chaotic. You place food directly on the counter. You use the lid of a jar as a plate. You spread toppings on a tortilla while holding it like a scroll. Your serving dishes include paper towels, the inside of the fridge door, and occasionally your own palm. And then there is the aftermath, the forensic evidence you discover when fully conscious again. Crumbs leading from the kitchen to your bed. Half-open containers placed nowhere near where they belong. A sticky jar lid welded shut by your own doing. A single pretzel placed inexplicably inside the microwave. But the most haunting discovery is always the franken snack left behind. A half-eaten creation on the counter whose origin story is unclear. You stare at it, head tilted, trying to deduce what ingredients you combined and why. Was it a sandwich, a dessert, a cry for help? You may never know, and yet there is something strangely comforting about these nocturnal inventions. Something soft, something human. Because while the snacks may be disasters, they're your disasters, made with the sleepy determination of someone just trying to satisfy a need they cannot name. Serquel, you may not be a chef, but they are an artist, a chaotic, unhinged, hungry artist. And the kitchen is their canvas. On Serquel, you have thoughts, deep thoughts, like what if laundry is just clothes reincarnating? You ponder existence, but only for 2 minutes at a time before forgetting what you were doing and wandering into another room. This is the intellectual awakening no one warned you about. The pill slows your body, yes, but it awakens a strange drifting layer of consciousness that transforms you into the sleepiest philosopher ever recorded. Aristotle walked the earth contemplating meaning. You shuffle across your living room contemplating whether your toaster is proud of you. You don't think often, but when you do, you think weird. The thoughts themselves arrive unannounced. They float gently into your mind like drowsy fireflies and glow for a moment before disappearing forever. You might be brushing your teeth, staring into the mirror, when suddenly your brain whispers, "Is time even real? Or is it just chores arranged in order?" You nod, because this definitely feels profound. Toothpaste drips down your chin. You forget what you were agreeing with. Sometimes you share these thoughts with other people, briefly, before realizing you don't have the energy to finish speaking. You start a sentence like, "Have you ever wondered why we clap?" Only to trail off into silence mid-thought, blinking at the wall as if the wall has the answer. It doesn't. But you stare anyway. This new philosophical version of you is gentle, soft, utterly distracted. You wander from room to room, moving with the elegance of a sleepy monk on a pilgrimage. You pause in doorways, trying to remember what quest you were originally on. The quest is gone. A new thought floats in. What if indoor plants are just introverted trees? You consider writing that down. You don't. Your thinking happens in bursts, tiny lightning strikes of curiosity. On the couch, you suddenly wonder if socks feel emotions. In the shower, you ponder whether birds argue about directions. Opening the fridge, you become convinced that food has personality traits. The yogurt is patient. The cheese is plotting something. The pickle jar holds secrets. But here's the thing. The thoughts never last long. You start analysing the meaning of existence, but end up staring at a spoon, wondering why it looks slightly smug. You try to reflect on your past, but get sidetracked by the mysterious shape of your own hand. You slip into philosophical monologues that last exactly 4 seconds before dissolving like cotton candy in warm water. And because your brain is moving through molasses, even basic tasks become part of your philosophical journey. Folding laundry feels symbolic. Washing dishes feels spiritual. You pick up a sock, hold it thoughtfully and murmur, "Everything returns home eventually," as though narrating a documentary about textiles. The environment around you shifts too. Rooms feel deeper. Time feels rounder. Light feels softer. You look at your furniture as though seeing it for the first time, whispering things like, "Chairs, what patient little creatures." Your emotional responses become strangely poetic. You see a dust particle drifting through sunlight and feel moved. You see an empty cereal bowl and wonder if it misses being full. At your sleepiest, you become convinced that you're tapping into some ancient, universal wisdom. Even though what you're actually thinking is, if I touch the thermostat and then touch it again, does it know it's me? Seroquel gives you the profound, peaceful certainty of someone who believes they have unlocked the secrets of the cosmos without remembering a single one, and then, just as quickly as it arrived, the moment evaporates. You blink, you stand, you walk into another room, and in that instant the philosopher disappears, replaced by someone staring into the refrigerator with no plan whatsoever. But for those brief, shimmering, groggy moments, you are a thinker, a sage, a scholar floating through the universe one slow blink at a time. You are the sleepiest philosopher alive, and honestly, you're pretty good at it. You attempt a Seroquel-free night. Big mistake. Your body, accustomed to chemical sedation, revolts. You lie awake, blinking at the ceiling, experiencing what can only be described as spiritual jet lag. At first, you're optimistic. You think, how bad could it be? People have slept without medication for thousands of years. You imagine yourself drifting off naturally, peacefully, like a sensible adult who doesn't rely on pharmaceutical horse tranquilizers to shut down their brain. You brush your teeth. You crawl into bed. You exhale dramatically, as if preparing your body for a yoga session, and then nothing, your eyes remain wide open. Your eyes, not just open, alert, hyper-aware, as though your brain, freed from sedation, has decided to clear out every thought you've ever had. You stare at the ceiling, which you now notice has far more texture than you remembered. You trace shapes in the bumps, wondering how long you've been ignoring this architectural detail. Time loses meaning almost immediately. Let's talk about your body. Your limbs, which normally sink into the mattress like warm bread, now feel itchy, restless, inconvenienced. You flip over, then back, then to your other side. You try lying on your stomach. You try lying on your back like a corpse preparing for burial. Nothing feels right. Every position is wrong. Your body's forgotten how to be without the chemical suggestion to stop functioning. Your mind, now fully unsupervised, becomes a chaotic carnival. You think about things that don't matter. You think about things that shouldn't matter. You think about things that frankly never mattered in the first place. Why did Jennifer in 3rd grade say the word salad so weird? Do turtles get bored? What if clouds have favourite people? At 1:00 a.m, you're restless. At 2:15, you're annoyed. At 3:00, you begin bargaining with higher powers. You promise to drink more water. You promise to eat fewer snacks in bed. You promise to stop Googling symptoms of illnesses you definitely don't have. You promise anything if it means falling asleep for even 12 minutes. But sleep does not come. Instead, you experience Seroquel withdrawal drift, a condition marked by staring at nothing and everything simultaneously. You lie perfectly still, but your thoughts pace around your skull like an agitated cat. Around 3:30 a.m. you try all the classic strategies: deep breathing, counting sheep, meditating, listening to rain sounds, drinking water, rearranging your pillows, rearranging your soul. But nothing works because your brain is in full rebellion mode, demanding the nightly tranquilizer it has come to depend on. You check your phone, big mistake, but you can't help it. The screen is blinding. You squint like a vampire seeing daylight. Every app feels too loud. Every notification feels personal. You close the phone and toss it aside dramatically, like a Regency-era lady rejecting a marriage proposal. By 4 a.m, your body begins slipping into a strange state of half-sleep. You're not awake, but you're definitely not asleep. Your thoughts blur, time stretches, your limbs float. You feel like a ghost haunting your own bedroom, and then comes the false sleep, where you think you're drifting off, only to realise you've been vividly imagining a conversation with a lamp for 20 straight minutes. At 5:15, you try sitting up. At 5:20, you lie back down. At 5:22, you whisper aloud, "This is impossible to no one." By sunrise, you accept defeat. You did not sleep. Not truly. You experience something between consciousness and existential crisis. Your eyes burn. Your mouth tastes like despair. Your spirit feels like it travelled across dimensions without a visa. You get out of bed looking like a Victorian ghost who died of mild inconvenience. And here's the worst part. After suffering through the longest night of your adult life, you walk to the kitchen, open your medication bottle and whisper, "Never again." Because the cold turkey attempt wasn't brave. It was educational, and the lesson was clear. You and sleep are no longer in charge. Seroquel is. At some point, you realise you want the pill, not because you're tired, but because it feels good to shut down. You crave the drift, the softness, the instant disconnect from reality. And that is when the alarm bells begin to ring. The shift happens quietly, silently. It doesn't announce itself with flashing lights or ominous music. It's subtle, an evening where you reach for the bottle before checking the clock. A day when you think about taking it not because you're exhausted, but because the world feels loud and sharp and you'd prefer it soft and muted. You start imagining the relief that comes with that first warm wave of drowsiness, the gentle melting of thought, the surrender of responsibility. It's not sleep you crave, it's escape. You tell yourself it's practical. You need rest. You deserve rest. You had a long day, or a medium day, or a short day that simply felt long because your brain has been glitching since noon. Any justification will do. You don't notice that your reasons for taking the pill are becoming flexible. Soon thoughts of bedtime become comforting, not the sleep part, but the dissolving part. You start looking forward to that moment where your brain folds like a soft napkin and hands control over to something else. You replay that sensation in your memory the way other people reminisce about a good meal or a satisfying vacation. Then comes the craving, not intense, not dramatic, just a gentle tug, a whisper, a thought like, "Wouldn't it be nice to drift off early tonight, even when it's still daylight outside, even when your responsibilities are half finished, even when your mood is fine, especially when your mood is fine." There is a specific kind of comfort in not having to feel awake, a softness, a blur, a quietness in your head that you begin to rely on. Reality feels too crisp, too detailed, too heavy. Serquel offers a dimmer switch, a pause button, a temporary disappearance. And that's where the alarm bells begin, not loud sirens, but small internal pings of recognition. You notice that you're thinking about the pill during the day. You wonder how early is too early to take it. You glance at the clock at 7:15 p.m. and hear yourself whisper, "Close enough." You begin arranging your evenings around it in ways that don't make sense. You cut conversations short. You decline invitations. You rush through dinner. All because you want to reach that warm, heavy moment where your brainwaves flatten into something simple and quiet. You don't fully admit this, of course, not out loud. Maybe not even to yourself. You rationalize, you intellectualize, you blame stress, you blame weather, you blame anything except the truth. That the sensation of shutting down has become something you seek out, something that feels good in a way you can't defend. Let's talk about the emotional part. There is relief in sedation, a relief so deep that you sometimes forget the difference between rest and silence. You stop wanting to sleep. You start wanting to not be awake. There's a difference, and you feel it in your bones. And yet, a small part of you knows that this craving isn't about health, knows that you've crossed into new territory, knows that dependency doesn't always arrive with drama. It can drift in softly, like fog settling over a quiet street. That knowledge sits in your stomach, heavy, familiar, almost but not quite enough to stop you. You sit with the pill in your hand, you look at it and think, this is too much comfort for something so small. You take it anyway. Because the truth is complicated. Because the craving doesn't feel dangerous, it feels soothing. Because you're tired of your brain being loud. Because you're tired of being tired. And as the medication begins its descent, as your thoughts soften and your edges blur, you promise yourself you'll do better tomorrow, or the next day, or whenever your mind isn't so heavy. But for now you let yourself drift, because craving it scares you, but the calm scares you less. You try to explain your situation. They say things like, have you tried melatonin? Meanwhile, melatonin couldn't take down a mildly excitable squirrel. You need something that could tranquilize a mid-sized horse. At first you think you can have a rational conversation about it. You sit across from your friends, stirring your drink slowly, explaining that Serquel is not just a sleep aid, it is a sleep command, a chemical off switch, a prescription lullaby with the gravitational pull of a dying star. You describe the heaviness, the hunger, the coma-length naps. You wait for empathy. Instead, your friends tilt their heads like golden retrievers hearing a strange whistle. Have you tried chamomile tea? One asks. Chamomile tea, as though your body hasn't built up a resistance to anything weaker than pharmaceutical sedation, as though a dainty floral steeping is going to overpower your brain chemistry. You swallow hard and try not to laugh. Another friend suggests meditation. It really helps me fall asleep, they say, breathing deeply to demonstrate. But meditation requires a functioning mind, one that doesn't wander off mid-thought to wonder if bread has feelings. Meditation requires stillness, focus, an inner sanctuary. Your inner sanctuary is currently being leased to Serquel like a long-term Airbnb. Then comes the worst suggestion. Have you tried just going to bed earlier? The rage you feel is quiet but immediate. Going to bed earlier is not the problem. Staying asleep without chemical assistance is the problem. You could lie in bed at 6 p.m, wrapped like a burrito, listening to ocean sounds, lavender mist sprayed directly into your face, and still be wide awake 6 hours later, blinking at the ceiling like a lizard on a heat rock. Your friends mean well, truly. They want to help. They love you. They simply do not understand the magnitude of your nightly situation. They've never experienced the slow-motion collapse that occurs when Serquel kicks in. They don't know what it feels like to fall asleep mid-sentence. They don't understand that once you take the pill, you have exactly 45 minutes to prepare for unconsciousness before your body dissolves into carpet. They ask questions, innocent questions, that highlight the gulf between your universes. Does it make you tired? Tired? No. It makes you cease. It makes you experience gravity on a spiritual level. It sends your thoughts into a jar and screws the lid tight. Do you ever just not take it? You remember the night you tried that? You remember the endless hours, the restless legs, the ceiling staring, the visions, the full-body spiritual malfunction. You consider answering honestly but settle for no. Why don't you switch medications? Ah, yes. Because switching psychiatric meds is famously casual. A breezy little activity, like changing socks or picking a new toothpaste flavour. As if your brain won't throw a tantrum the moment you adjust anything. Eventually you stop trying to explain. Not because you don't trust your friends, but because they live in a different reality. One where sleep arrives gently, naturally, like a responsible adult paying its taxes. Meanwhile, you live in a reality where sleep must be wrestled into submission with prescription medication that could double as wildlife tranquilizer. Your friends go home thinking you're exaggerating. You watch them leave, smiling politely, knowing the truth. If any of them ever took even half your dose, they would disintegrate into the furniture. But despite the frustration, you hold no resentment. How could they understand something they've never experienced? They don't know the nightly rituals, the timing, the hunger, the fog. They don't know the quiet relief that floods your body the moment the pill begins to work. They don't know the fear of craving that relief too much. So you forgive them their chamomile, their melatonin, their enthusiastic breathing exercises. Because one day, they might have trouble sleeping. And when they do, they'll ask for your advice, and you will smile softly and say, start with melatonin. Every refill appointment becomes a performance. You sit there, half sedated, answering questions like, how's your energy? While blinking at the speed of a dying Roomba. The doctor nods and says, great to hear. This is your monthly ritual, the grand theatrical production known as pretending you're a stable, fully conscious adult for 6 to 8 minutes. The waiting room is bright, far too bright, and you sit there trying to keep your head upright while fighting the gravitational pull that Serquel installed in your neck. A nurse calls your name, and you rise slowly, as though emerging from a crypt. Once you enter the exam room, the performance begins. You sit on that crinkly paper table that makes you feel like an unwrapped sandwich, and your doctor, cheerful, rested, unmedicated, swivels in their rolling chair and begins asking standard questions. Questions for normal people. Questions you are in no condition to answer honestly. How's your sleep? You blink once, twice, slowly. The truth is complicated. You're sleeping. Excessively. Aggressively. You sleep so deeply it should come with a warning label. But you don't want your doctor to panic, so you smile with the slow confidence of someone who's not completely sure where they are. Good, you say. Really good. The doctor nods. How's your mood? Your mood? Your mood is whatever Serquel decides it will be. Some days you're soft and reflective, like a cloud with sentimental regrets. Other days you are blank, a human screensaver. But the doctor is asking casually, as if the answer is obvious, so you respond, pretty okay, I think, even though you're only 40% sure you exist right now. The doctor nods. How's your energy? Ah, the funniest question of all. Your energy is a myth, a rumour, a distant memory from the era before sedation. But you don't want to complicate the appointment, so you shrug and say, not bad, while your body attempts to sink into the exam table like quicksand. The doctor nods harder. Then comes the moment where they peer at their computer and say something truly unhinged, like, looks like everything's going well. You smile politely because this is what you always do. Even though going well in your world means accidentally sleeping through an entire weekday and waking up in a hoodie you don't remember putting on, your doctor doesn't see the midnight snack pilgrimages. They don't see you trying to form sentences at 8 a.m. They don't see you sitting on the edge of your bed in the morning, rebooting like an outdated operating system. They see you for 6 minutes once a month. And in those 6 minutes, you've become incredibly skilled at pretending to be functional. It's not that your doctor doesn't care. They do, deeply. But they are on a schedule. They are breezing through appointments like a speedboat across calm water. Meanwhile, you're drifting in a rowboat with no oars, caught in the Serquel fog, smiling dazedly. Sometimes you try to express concern. You say things like, "I've been sleeping kind of long," or "I think I'm eating more at night," or "I woke up in a laundry basket," and the doctor, still typing, still nodding, still optimistic, says, "That can happen. Totally normal. Totally. Normal." You begin to wonder what abnormal looks like. You imagine someone describing symptoms far more catastrophic, and the doctor responding the same way, smiling, nodding, adjusting the dosage up or down like a DJ fine-tuning a playlist. Then the appointment ends. The doctor prints your refill slip with the flourish of someone sending you back into the world renewed. You leave the office blinking slowly, shuffling toward the parking lot, feeling like a tranquilized deer who's been declared perfectly healthy. And yet there's comfort in it. Strange comfort. Because even though your life has become a foggy collage of naps, snacks, and existential wandering, your doctor believes you're functioning fine. And if a licensed professional says you're fine, then maybe, just maybe, you are. Serquel makes everything softer, sometimes too soft. You cry at commercials, you cry at laundry detergent, you cry because you forgot what you were about to say. It starts slowly, so slowly you don't notice it at first. One day you tear up at a heartwarming dog ad, and you think, okay, that was kind of sweet. Then the next day you see a bottle of fabric softener smiling at you from the shelf, and suddenly you feel overcome with nostalgia. Grief? Laundry-related tenderness? You're not sure. All you know is that your eyes sting and you're whispering, "Why?" to a plastic bottle that cannot answer you. Serquel doesn't just make you emotional, it makes you gently, beautifully, ridiculously emotional. It softens the edges of your mind until everything, every object, every sound, every fleeting thought carries the weight of a full character arc. A napkin on the counter looks lonely. Your socks look optimistic. A cup in the sink feels abandoned. You become the narrator of a sad indie film set in your own apartment. Let's talk about commercials. You used to sit through them without blinking. Now, a cereal ad with a father and son sends you into a tailspin. A pet adoption commercial ruins your entire evening. Even fast food ads make you emotional. Not because of the food, but because the people in the ads seem so happy and so free and so alive. Meanwhile, you're holding back tears because you can't emotionally handle the idea of two strangers sharing a milkshake. Then there are the random ambush emotions. You drop your fork and feel sudden, overwhelming shame. You misplace your phone and experience grief usually reserved for the loss of ancient civilizations. You forget what you were about to say mid-sentence, and your brain responds by sounding a tiny internal alarm. We are devastated. We are ruined. We must mourn this thought. Never mind that the thought was probably about sandwiches. Even music changes. Songs you've heard 1,000 times suddenly feel personal. Target background music feels profound. A children's rhyme feels like a message from the universe. You start analysing lyrics that don't need analysis. Row, row, row your boat. A metaphor for existence. Happy birthday. A meditation on mortality. Your emotional responses also become unpredictable in timing. Sometimes you cry immediately, like a faucet with a broken handle. Other times, you delay. You'll see something mildly sad, go completely still, and then, 20 minutes later, while rinsing a cup, burst into tears like a Victorian child learning about heartbreak for the first time. And it's not just sadness. Joy hits differently too. You see a dog wearing a sweater and feel an overwhelming surge of hope for humanity. You take a sip of cold water and feel gratitude so powerful it almost changes your life. You find a snack you forgot you bought and feel blessed by the heavens. Your emotions may be misguided, but they are passionate. Conversations become unpredictable emotional minefields. Someone casually says, "I like your shirt," and you respond with an earnest, trembly, "Thank you, that means a lot." They were not prepared for this level of sincerity. You were not prepared either. But here you are, glistening with unexpected sentiment. Worst of all is the identity confusion. You start wondering, is this who I am now? A person who cries at dishwasher detergent? A person who gets emotional over remembering to refill the Brita? A person who tears up because a pigeon looked tired? You question everything. You stare dramatically into space. You sigh with the weight of history. But even amidst the chaos, there's something beautifully human about it. You are softer, yes, more fragile at the edges, but also more open, more in tune, more aware that the world, messy, random, loud, still contains tiny sparks of meaning, even if your brain is currently interpreting those sparks with the emotional clarity of a half-sedated poet. And when the emotional roller coaster becomes too much, when you find yourself crying because the toaster sounded lonely, you take a breath and remind yourself gently, this is temporary, this is chemical, this is absurd. You didn't sign up for this ride, but for now, you're on it. You realize something unsettling. Seroquel sleep isn't normal sleep. It is coma sleep. You descend into a void so deep you could miss a tornado, an alien invasion, or the UPS guy. This is not the kind of sleep other people talk about when they brag about crashing early or sleeping like a baby. Babies wake up. People who crash early still hear their alarms. But you? Once the pill takes effect, you do not so much fall asleep as cease operations. You power down like an old desktop computer, the screen fades to black, the machine clicks off. And for the next 10 to 14 hours, nothing, absolutely nothing can reach you. Let's talk about the descent. It doesn't feel like drifting or floating or gently slipping into unconsciousness. It feels like someone pulled a lever and dropped you through a trapdoor directly into the earth. One moment you're awake, blinking slowly. The next you're collapsing into sleep with the desperate enthusiasm of someone who's been running from wolves. You don't remember turning off the light. You don't remember adjusting your blanket. You don't remember lying down fully. You remember nothing, and the nothingness is the point. Seroquel sleep is pure, uninterrupted darkness. Dreamless, sensationless. Time doesn't pass in a linear fashion. Time doesn't pass at all. You don't experience hours. You don't experience rest. You simply stop existing for a while. When you wake up, it's not because your body decided to greet the morning. It's because the sedation finally loosened its grip, like a giant tranquilizing hand saying, "Okay, fine. Go back to being conscious, if you must." The world outside continues without you. Sirens could scream past your window. A marching band could parade through your house. Aliens could land on your lawn and ask for directions. The UPS driver could knock, ring the bell, leave a package, knock again, and perform an interpretive dance of increasing urgency, and you would remain peacefully unconscious, drooling softly into your pillow. When you finally resurface, it happens abruptly. You awaken in the same position you fell asleep in, limbs stiff, hair flattened awkwardly on one side. You gasp slightly, like someone emerging from underwater. Your first thought is usually something profound like, "What year is it?" Or "Who am I?" Or "Why is my tongue dry enough to ignite spontaneously?" This is followed by confusion. Always confusion. The sunlight feels too bright. The room feels too real. Your body, which has been suspended in stillness for over half a day, feels heavy and foreign, as though you're renting it short term. You try lifting an arm. It resists. You turn your head. It cracks like an ancient door hinge in a haunted house. Then you check the time, and that's when panic mixes with awe. You didn't just sleep in. You slept through an entire shift at work. You slept through breakfast, through lunch, through every reasonable waking hour. You slept so long that your mattress is now imprinted with a perfect mould of your unconscious form. People text you, worried. Are you okay? Did you get my message? Hello? You respond, but slowly, using words that feel thick and clumsy. It's hard to form sentences when you still feel 40% sedated. And the strangest part, the most concerning part, you didn't dream, not even once. No pleasant fantasies, no symbolic nightmares. Just a dark, private universe where nothing exists. Not even you. Seroquel sleep is too good. That's the unsettling truth. It is seductive. It is velvet. It is absolute. It promises you relief from thought, from feeling, from reality itself. It gives you the deepest rest you've ever known at the cost of every sign of consciousness. And as you sit there the next morning staring blankly, drinking water as your brain slowly reboots, you can't help but feel a mix of gratitude and apprehension. Because sleep shouldn't feel this powerful. And yet you know, without question, you'll let yourself fall back into that void again tonight, whether you mean to or not. You finish dinner, you feel full. Then Serquel enters the chat. Suddenly you could eat 14 granola bars and a rotisserie chicken. You're not hungry, you're participating in a ritual. This is not appetite in the traditional sense. This is not your stomach politely whispering, perhaps a light snack. No. This is a full-body announcement, more like an ancient hunger spirit rising within you, demanding tribute. A tide of craving that washes away logic, self-control, and any memory of what a portion size is supposed to look like. It starts subtly, a soft itch in the brain, a whisper. Maybe I'll just have a little something. A light snack, you think. Something small and elegant, like a handful of almonds or a single apple slice. A snack Gwyneth Paltrow would approve of. You open the pantry. And there, standing in the glow of the cabinet light, you become a medieval forager who hasn't eaten for 3 winters. Your pupils dilate, your posture shifts. You assess the shelves with the seriousness of a general planning a siege. Everything looks appealing. Everything. Crackers? Yes. Cereal? Yes. Leftover bread, ends you normally throw away? Absolutely yes. That random seasoning packet with no known origin. It suddenly feels relevant. The moment Serquel hits, your hunger is no longer about taste. It's about volume, substance, chewing, shoveling. Your stomach becomes a void, a cavern, a black hole that delights in consuming anything edible within arm's reach. Let's walk through the stages. You begin with something innocent, a granola bar, a bowl of cereal, a piece of fruit. You think, there, that should do it. But the hunger is not satisfied. The hunger laughs. You start combining things in ways that would alarm a nutritionist. Peanut butter on crackers, peanut butter on bread, peanut butter on things that should not have peanut butter on them. You realise you're holding 3 different snacks simultaneously, rotating through them like you're conducting a tasting flight at an all-carb winery. Suddenly you need protein, meat, something that feels like it belongs in a hunting documentary. You open the fridge with newfound purpose and consider eating leftovers cold, right from the container. You eye the rotisserie chicken. You tear off a piece with your hands. You're now operating on instinct alone. You walk away from the kitchen, arms full. Think you're done, then turn around and go right back. You forgot something, or maybe you remembered something, or maybe the gravitational pull of the pantry is simply too strong. You move in and out of the kitchen like a tide powered by carbs. Eventually you find yourself standing in front of the fridge again, chewing something, not sure how you got there. You're holding a slice of cheese in one hand and a half-eaten muffin in the other. Crumbs cover your pajama shirt. You look down at yourself, dazed, and think, why? Because it's the ritual, not a choice, a Serquel mandate. Your hunger isn't physical, it's ceremonial. You're not eating because you're empty. You're eating because the chemical in your bloodstream has flipped a switch labelled consume, and you must obey. The aftermath is equally absurd. You waddle back to bed, stomach full, hands sticky, spirit oddly satisfied. You collapse into sleep, deep, immediate, absolute, leaving the kitchen looking like a snack tornado passed through. The next morning you find the evidence, cracker crumbs in your bed, a spoon on the counter, a half-unwrapped granola bar sitting beside the sink like a tiny edible clue. You stare at it all in mild horror and mild pride, because last night you upheld a tradition, and tonight you will uphold it again. The appetite never ends, not because you're hungry, but because Serquel has summoned you to feast, and you always answer the call. You know you shouldn't take extra, you know it, so you hide them from yourself, in places you'll definitely forget tomorrow. You're both the thief and the detective. This is the moment things officially go from mildly concerning to full psychological escape room. You recognize the craving creeping in. You hear the whisper, just one more take, one more fall asleep faster, deeper, harder, disappear sooner. And because you know that you cannot trust midnight you, the reckless version of yourself who makes snack monstrosities and sleeps in geometries that defy physics, you begin a strange ritual. You hide the pills, not from your doctor, not from your friends, from yourself. It begins innocently, placing the bottle in a drawer instead of leaving it on the nightstand. You think, there, that should stop me. But no, midnight. You is resourceful. Midnight you is determined. Midnight you is an archaeologist of poor choices. So you escalate. You tuck the bottle behind books, behind sweaters, behind the canned goods you pretend you'll use one day for cooking. You shove it into the back of the cabinet behind a dusty bag of quinoa you bought during the brief era you believed in self-improvement. And you go to bed feeling proud, responsible, mature. But then the next evening arrives. As soon as you feel even a hint of drowsiness, the scavenger hunt begins. You wander through your home like a detective who knows the culprit personally. You check the obvious places first. The drawer, the counter, the backpack. Nothing. You nod to yourself gravely. So we're doing this again. You begin your search with the sleepy intensity of someone who should not be operating machinery or opening any container with a lid. Cabinets, shelves, under the bed, in old purses, behind board games you haven't touched since 2011. You discover things you didn't even know you owned. A single oven mitt, a broken calculator, a greeting card signed love. Grandma from a grandmother you do not technically have. But not the pills. The déjà vu is crushing, because you realise past you was too good at this. Past you was clever. Past you was a mastermind of self-sabotage. You mutter to yourself like a detective in a noir film. Think, if I were me, where would I hide it? This is when it dawns on you that you're now living in a puzzle you created. A personal escape room, except instead of escaping, you're trying to locate controlled substances before your brain shuts down like a dying flashlight. Eventually, you find them in a place that makes no logical sense. Inside a winter boot, under a couch cushion, behind the toaster, in the freezer, nestled beside frozen peas like a tiny alarming treasure. You stare at the pill bottle, slack-jawed. You marvel at your own chaotic strategy. You whisper, "Why would I do that?" There is no answer. And once the pill is in your hand, the internal debate begins. Don't take two, you think. Absolutely don't take two. Midnight. You whispers, but consider how sleepy you'd be. You refuse. You stay strong. You swallow one dose and place the bottle someplace new, the bathroom cabinet this time. Surely you'll remember. Surely this is fine. You won't. It's not. The next night, the game resets. The hiding becomes more elaborate, more theatrical. You wrap the bottle in a sock, you tuck it behind an air vent, you zip it inside a suitcase that hasn't travelled in years. At one point, you even slip it into an empty cereal box, thinking you're a genius who has outsmarted future temptation. But the truth is, you are just creating a cycle. The pill hide-and-seek Olympics. A nightly ritual of confusion, frustration, and accidental minimalism. And strangely it works. Not well, not elegantly, but it does. Because by the time future you finally finds the bottle, you're so exhausted from the hunt that taking the correct dose feels like discipline. A small victory. You won the game. For tonight. Tomorrow. You'll wake up. You'll blink. You'll wonder where you hid the pills this time. And the search will begin again. You once went outside. Now you decline invitations with phrases like, "I have to be home before my bedtime pill." You're 35 years old and living like an elderly woodland creature. You wonder how you got here, how a medication meant to help turned into something you depend on like a nightly lullaby with addictive tendencies. You promise you'll get control tomorrow after a nap. It doesn't hit you all at once. Shame rarely does. It arrives quietly, the way dust gathers on a bookshelf, slow, soft, barely noticeable, until one day you open the curtains and see it clearly. At first, you tell yourself you're being dramatic. Plenty of people take medication. Plenty of people need help sleeping. It's not a big deal. But then gradually that whisper of doubt gets louder. You start catching yourself in tiny moments, like when you check the time obsessively in the evening, not because you're excited about plans, but because you're waiting for the hour when it's socially acceptable to tranquilize yourself, or when you decline a perfectly reasonable activity because it might interfere with your pill window. You tell yourself, I can reschedule that brunch, but deep down you know the pill has become the main character of your nighttime routine. The shame is subtle. It's not sharp or punishing. It's a soft ache, a gentle tug behind your ribs, a flicker of recognition when you realize you've begun structuring your life around sedation. You know you should probably cut back or rebalance or speak to your doctor. But all those solutions require effort. And effort is difficult when your entire personality now operates at 60% power on a good day. The shame grows when you compare yourself, unfairly, to people who fall asleep naturally. People who say things like, "I was so tired I just passed out," as if that's a normal biological function you too could access. You listen to them, nodding along, while mentally calculating how long it will be before you can crawl into bed and swallow your nightly chemical escape hatch. Then there's the part where you start noticing how much you look forward to the pill, how the thought of that warm, heavy wave comforts you more than the actual process of going to sleep. It becomes your nightly treat, your reward, your escape. And that is where the shame curls in quietly and asks, is this healthy? Is this okay? You push the thought away, of course, because confronting it would require change, and change requires energy, and energy requires sleep, and sleep requires, you guessed it, the pill. Your logic becomes a snake eating its own tail. You know the cycle is odd. You know it's not sustainable. But the alternative, lying awake all night, staring into the void of your own thoughts, is far worse. Some nights, the shame is stronger. You sit on the edge of your bed, pill in hand, staring at it like it's both your captor and your liberator. I shouldn't need this so much, you think. I shouldn't crave this feeling. But after a long day of being a human in the world, the desire to shut yourself off wins easily. And then you swallow it. Because that's what you do. And within minutes, your body relaxes, your mind unwinds, and the shame dissolves into the background like sugar stirred into warm tea. Tomorrow, you tell yourself. Tomorrow you'll cut back. Tomorrow you'll make changes. Tomorrow you'll gain control. But tomorrow arrives, and you're tired again. The morning fog is heavy. The daytime haze is thick. You promise yourself change but feel too weighed down to begin. And evening comes, and the cycle repeats. Yet, and this matters, your shame isn't hopeless. It isn't condemning. It's just a reminder of your humanity, of your limits, of the fact that you're doing the best you can with the tools you have, even if one of those tools is stronger than it probably needs to be. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're just caught in a loop, navigating life with a medication that doesn't always play nice. And the shame that creeps in, it's not there to punish you. It's there to nudge you, to whisper gently, hey, maybe we should look at this, but not tonight. Tonight, you're too tired. Tonight, you'll try again after a nap. You wonder how you got here. How a medication meant to help turned into something you depend on like a nightly lullaby with addictive tendencies. You promise you'll get control tomorrow after a nap. It doesn't hit you all at once. Shame rarely does. It arrives quietly, the way dust gathers on a bookshelf, slow, soft, barely noticeable, until one day you open the curtains and see it clearly. At first, you tell yourself you're being dramatic. Plenty of people take medication. Plenty of people need help sleeping. It's not a big deal. But then, gradually, that whisper of doubt gets louder. You start catching yourself in tiny moments. Like when you check the time obsessively in the evening, not because you're excited about plans, but because you're waiting for the hour when it's socially acceptable to tranquilize yourself. Or when you decline a perfectly reasonable activity because it might interfere with your pill window. You tell yourself, I can reschedule that brunch. But deep down, you know the pill has become the main character of your nighttime routine. The shame is subtle. It's not sharp or punishing. It's a soft ache, a gentle tug behind your ribs, a flicker of recognition when you realize you've begun structuring your life around sedation. You know you should probably cut back or rebalance or speak to your doctor, but all those solutions require effort, and effort is difficult when your entire personality now operates at 60% power on a good day. The shame grows when you compare yourself, unfairly, to people who fall asleep naturally. People who say things like, I was so tired I just passed out, as if that's a normal biological function you too could access. You listen to them, nodding along, while mentally calculating how long it will be before you can crawl into bed and swallow your nightly chemical escape hatch. Then there's the part where you start noticing how much you look forward to the pill. How the thought of that warm, heavy wave comforts you more than the actual process of going to sleep. It becomes your nightly treat, your reward, your escape. And that is where the shame curls in quietly and asks, is this healthy? Is this okay? You push the thought away, of course, because confronting it would require change, and change requires energy, and energy requires sleep, and sleep requires, you guessed it, the pill. Your logic becomes a snake eating its own tail. You know the cycle is odd. You know it's not sustainable. But the alternative, lying awake all night, staring into the void of your own thoughts, is far worse. Some nights, the shame is stronger. You sit on the edge of your bed, pill in hand, staring at it like it's both your captor and your liberator. I shouldn't need this so much, you think. I shouldn't crave this feeling. But after a long day of being a human in the world, the desire to shut yourself off wins easily, and then you swallow it. Because that's what you do, and within minutes your body relaxes, your mind unwinds, and the shame dissolves into the background like sugar stirred into warm tea. Tomorrow, you tell yourself. Tomorrow you'll cut back. Tomorrow you'll make changes. Tomorrow you'll gain control. But tomorrow arrives, and you're tired again. The morning fog is heavy. The daytime haze is thick. You promise yourself change, but feel too weighed down to begin. And evening comes, and the cycle repeats. Yet, and this matters, your shame isn't hopeless. It isn't condemning. It's just a reminder of your humanity, of your limits, of the fact that you're doing the best you can with the tools you have, even if one of those tools is stronger than it probably needs to be. You're not weak, you're not broken, you're just caught in a loop navigating life with a medication that doesn't always play nice. And the shame that creeps in is not there to punish you, it's there to nudge you, to whisper gently, hey, maybe we should look at this. But not tonight. Tonight, you're too tired. Tonight, you'll try again after a nap. One night, lying in bed, staring into the dark, you finally think, am I even sleeping anymore, or am I just shutting down? And that thought lingers, heavy and slow, as the pill dissolves and carries you away again. This question doesn't shout. It doesn't arrive with panic or urgency. It arrives with a quiet weight, the kind that settles gently on your chest like a sleepy cat. You lie there blinking at nothing, feeling the edges of consciousness blur, and for the first time you truly wonder if what you experience each night is rest, or something closer to temporary non-existence. Your body knows the difference, even if your mind pretends not to. It's the small details that bring you here. The way you remember falling asleep as a child, soft, gradual, whimsical, versus the way you fall asleep now, abruptly, completely, like someone pressed a power button. The way dreams used to come in fragments and colours, and now they barely come at all. The way mornings used to feel gentle, and now they feel like resurfacing from deep underwater, lungs tight, brain fogged, soul mildly resentful. So you lie there, suspended in the dark, feeling the medication begin its slow descent through your bloodstream, and you ask yourself the question again, is this sleep, or is this just unconsciousness? You don't know the answer, and that unsettles you more than you'd like to admit. Your mind tries to reassure you. Everyone needs help sometimes, it whispers. But there's another voice, quieter, wiser, sounding suspiciously like a tired Victorian ghost, asking whether this help has quietly become dependence, whether you've traded the discomfort of insomnia for the discomfort of not quite being present anymore. As the wave of drowsiness deepens, you feel yourself slipping. Your limbs go heavy, your thoughts loosen, and the world begins to dim in ways that feel less like drifting into a dream and more like collapsing into an abyss. The question lingers. If I'm not awake and I'm not dreaming, where exactly do I go? You think about all the times you woke up in strange positions, in strange moods, at strange hours. You think about the 18-hour naps, the mornings you couldn't quite tell whether you were waking up or rebooting, the nights when taking the pill felt like signing out of reality, voluntarily, with relief but also with the faint edge of unease. You think about the person you were before Serquel. Someone who struggled, yes, but someone who still experienced the slow fade of normal sleep. Someone who rested, not someone who shut down. And there, in the darkness, you feel a pulse of grief for that version of you. Whoever they were, however long ago they existed. You wonder if you could sleep without it now. You wonder what the night would feel like if your mind had to navigate it alone. You imagine tossing, turning, staring into the void of your own thoughts, and suddenly shutting down doesn't seem so bad. The fear mingles with comfort, and it's this emotional contradiction that frightens you the most. Because the truth is, unconsciousness is easy. Dreamless sleep is easy. The pill is easy. But ease has a cost, and somewhere between your last coherent thought and the chemical curtain lowering across your brain, you recognize that part of you doesn't want to ask the question at all. Part of you fears the answer. Part of you already knows it. Still, the moment passes, the darkness softens, your body surrenders. The question fades like chalk in the rain, and as the last thread of consciousness unravels, you tell yourself gently, reassuringly, the same promise you always make. You'll think about it tomorrow. Not tonight. Tonight, you shut down. There comes a night, always inevitable, when you hold the pill in your hand and think, wait, did I already take this? You stand there, blinking like a confused barn owl trying to replay your last 3 minutes of life. Did you swallow it? Did you only think about swallowing it? Did you place it on the counter and then wander away to sniff a bag of pretzels? There is no answer. Only fear. This moment is a rite of passage, your official induction ceremony into the Serquel Hall of Confusion. It begins with a simple, innocent thought. Time to take my pill. But as you unscrew the bottle, as you tap the tablet into your palm, as you stand there in the soft glow of your kitchen light, the doubt slinks in. Surely I didn't take it already, right? Right? You try to recall. You search your memory the way someone searches a junk drawer, frantically, without precision, uncovering things you weren't looking for, like the fact that you forgot to respond to an email 2 weeks ago. You replay your steps. Did you walk to the sink? Did you grab water? Did you swallow something? Or was that yesterday? Or was that a dream? Your mind, already foggy from the anticipation of sedation, behaves like a browser with 47 tabs open, none labelled correctly. You try to focus. You fail. You blink slowly. Nothing comes back. So you begin checking for clues like a detective who fully knows they're the least qualified person on the case. You look in the sink. No glass. You look on the counter. No stray tablet. You look at the pill bottle. Same number of pills? More? Fewer? Who knows? Math is impossible right now. You consider opening your mouth to check if there is pill dust lingering on your tongue, then decide that's insane but not entirely out of the question. Then comes the physical check-in. Do I feel sleepy yet? Well, yes, but you always feel sleepy. Serquel has permanently shifted your baseline mood from awake human to softly wilting houseplant. Your body offers no helpful data. This is when the fear intensifies. If you already took it and take another, you'll be unconscious until the next presidential administration. If you didn't take it and skip it, you'll be awake until dawn, staring at ceiling shadows and contemplating your own mortality. You weigh the pros and cons of each disastrous outcome. It feels like choosing between two terrible doors on a very slow, very sleepy game show. In desperation, you begin searching for evidence you might have left behind unconsciously, breadcrumbs of cognition. You check the trash. You check your pockets. You check the fridge, because sometimes you do things that make absolutely no sense. No pill. You consider calling a friend. Hey, random question. Were you here when I took my medication? But you realise this is not a friendship-strengthening kind of inquiry. So you develop a new plan. Sit very still and wait for something to happen. If the pill kicks in, you'll know. If it doesn't, you'll also know. This is your scientific method now. Biology by vibes. Minutes pass. You stare at the wall with the intensity of a Victorian child recovering from a fainting spell. You try to sense the subtle shift that always arrives before unconsciousness, but your body feels unhelpful and slightly judgmental. Finally, exhausted from the thinking which should never have been required at this hour, you make a decision. Not a confident decision, not a medically approved decision, just a decision. You either take the pill or you don't, and then you pray you chose correctly. If you took it twice, you wake up 19 hours later in a position that defies physics, with crumbs in your hair and time missing. If you accidentally skip it, you stay awake all night, blinking at the ceiling like a lizard waiting for the sun. Either way, tomorrow begins with the same solemn vow. I'm getting one of those pill organisers. You won't get one, of course. You'll forget. And the cycle will repeat. Another night, another pill, another moment where you stare into the abyss of your own unreliable memory. Only fear. Always fear. At some point, your pillow becomes a co-conspirator. You talk to it. You tell it things. You promise to buy a nicer pillowcase if it will just, please, support your neck tonight. But the moment the Serquel hits, your pillow becomes a geographical challenge, shifting beneath you like a soft, judgmental tectonic plate. You adjust it 37 times before passing out mid-adjustment. This is the strange and delicate relationship between you and your pillow. Once a simple object, now an emotional support deity you make nightly offerings to. You lie down with the optimism of someone who believes comfort is in reach. You fluff the pillow. You pat the pillow. You arrange the pillow with the care of an archaeologist restoring an ancient relic. But Serquel you is a different creature entirely. A creature whose muscles slacken, whose limbs become unpredictable, whose tolerance for minor discomfort disappears instantly. And so begins the bargaining. You start reasonably. Please just cooperate tonight. Please just be normal. You shift. The pillow shifts with you. Suddenly it's too low, too high, too flat, too mountainous. It somehow becomes both warm and cold at the same time, and neither is acceptable. You flip it, then flip it again, then rotate it, then fold it, then unfold it. You contort your neck into shapes that haven't existed since medieval torture diagrams, trying to find the exact alignment that will unlock the secrets of restful sleep. Nothing works. Your thoughts grow dramatic, operatic, even. "Why have you betrayed me?" you whisper at the pillow. The pillow, smug and silent, offers no reply. Serquel begins to seep in. Your body grows heavy, deliciously heavy, the kind of heaviness that promises imminent oblivion. But because you're now a perpetually sleepy philosopher with a flair for melodrama, you interpret this heaviness as a sign that the pillow must be perfect before you let the darkness take you. So you adjust it again and again. You wedge your hand underneath it. You smash your face into it. You punch it lightly, not out of anger, but out of resigned necessity. You create a pillow canyon, a pillow mountain, a pillow cliff. Nothing feels right. Your mind wanders. Maybe I need a new pillow. A memory foam pillow. A cooling pillow. A pillow that whispers affirmations. A pillow made by monks. You imagine going online, researching ergonomic designs, reading reviews written by people who take pillow shopping far too seriously. But you will not buy a new pillow. This is the pillow you have. This is the pillow you live with. This is the pillow you have entered a long-term dysfunctional relationship with. As sedation deepens, your movements slow. You attempt one final adjustment, one last effort to create a micro-environment of comfort. But halfway through the motion, you stall. You freeze. Your hand remains under the pillow. Your other arm flops helplessly across your chest. Your head tilts downward at an angle that would alarm a chiropractor. And that's when sleep hits you. Not gently, not gradually, but instantly, like you were unplugged from the wall. You wake up hours later, neck stiff, pillow half off the bed, sheet wrapped around your ankle like a maritime hazard. Your first thought is confusion. Your second thought is betrayal. Your third thought is a vow. Tonight will be different. It will not be different, but the vow is comforting. You lift the pillow, you fluff it again with a kind of weary hope. You tell it softly, "Come on, let's try this again." You treat it not as an object, but as a stubborn pet with whom you share a long, complicated history. And deep down, you both know the truth. Serquel will win. The pillow will migrate. You will adjust it 37 more times, and you will fall asleep mid-adjustment. Again. Because every night is a new negotiation, and the pillow always has the final word. One night, under the influence of peak drowsy inspiration, you pick up a new hobby. Maybe it's knitting. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's reorganizing your refrigerator by emotional temperature. By the next morning, you discover a half-finished scarf, a page of handwriting that looks like hieroglyphs, and a lone pickle arranged meaningfully on the top shelf. You decide no more nighttime creativity. It begins the same way every questionable life choice begins, with confidence. Sleepy, sluggish, chemically induced confidence, yes, but confidence nonetheless. Somewhere between the pill, hitting your bloodstream and your consciousness beginning to dim like a dying light bulb, a spark of inspiration catches fire. Suddenly you're convinced you must create something, express something, fix something. Your brain tells you that tonight is the perfect moment to become a brand new person with a brand new hobby, a Renaissance individual, a visionary. Never mind the fact that your coordination has already begun to fail. Never mind that your eyelids are drooping and your thoughts are the consistency of warm oatmeal. No, you insist. This is your moment. You begin with the gentle hobbies. Knitting seems safe, cozy even. You sit with the yarn in your lap, needles poised, ready to create a scarf worthy of a cottagecore influencer, but your hands betray you immediately. Your stitches are chaotic, loose, borderline violent. You produce a few inches of mutated fabric that looks less like a scarf and more like an item that should be confiscated at airport security. You move on. Perhaps journaling will be easier, reflective, grounding. You open a notebook, turn to a blank page and begin writing the thoughts that float gently through your Serquel softened mind. You write slowly, carefully, meaningfully, and when you wake up the next morning, you stare at what appears to be some combination of ancient runes and a grocery list. The page reads something like, "Life circle, warm grapes, everything, folding time." You close the notebook. You pretend it doesn't exist. If you're more physically inclined, you might attempt cleaning, organizing, rearranging. Activities that require structure you absolutely do not possess right now. You may decide your closet needs immediate attention. You begin pulling clothes out, folding them into shapes that do not exist in geometry, and shoving them into new illogical places. The refrigerator is a particular danger zone. You open the door and are greeted by the cold glow of possibility. You sort items based on temperature, texture, or your new favourite method, emotional energy. You place the lonely pickle on the top shelf because he deserves better. You group yogurts together because they seem like friends. You move the mustard 4 times because something about its aura feels wrong. And then, inevitably, comes the art phase. Maybe you try drawing. You confidently sketch something on a napkin, a masterpiece you believe. In the morning you discover you have drawn what looks like a potato with feelings. Maybe you try painting. You dip the brush into the wrong cup, mix colours that should never meet, and produce something that could be interpreted as a sunset or a crime scene. No matter the activity, the result is always the same. A strange artifact left behind like evidence of your nighttime alter ego. Something half-finished, half-dreamed, fully bizarre. You examine it with the weary eyes of an archaeologist, realizing they may have accidentally uncovered a cursed object. And then, the moment of reckoning. The realization that you, in your sedated state, should not have access to hobbies. That nighttime you is a chaotic, creative gremlin whose projects are unpredictable and possibly dangerous to both yourself and your household organization system. So you make a vow, a solemn vow. No more hobbies after the pill, and like most vows made under exhaustion, this one lasts about 3 nights. Because eventually the spark returns. The sleeve you meant to mend calls out to you. The notebook tempts you. The fridge whispers, "Rearrange me." And once again you pick up the yarn or the pen or the pickle and create something extraordinary, senseless, and uniquely Serquel-induced. A hobby you absolutely, undeniably should not have started. But will start again. And so tonight, as you finally let your body melt into the mattress and your brain clock out for the evening, take a slow breath. You've wandered through the strange, sleepy maze of a Seroquel addict's life, through the hunger, the confusion, the 18-hour naps, the cereal-fueled midnight quests, the moments of hilariously misplaced confidence, and the mornings when even your bones needed a reboot. It's a funny world, a bizarre world, but also a human one. Because all of it, the cravings, the chaos, the unintentional grocery shopping, is just someone trying to cope, trying to rest, trying to navigate a modern life that never seems to quiet down on its own. The hilarity of it all sits right alongside something softer, the reminder that people will do almost anything for a little peace, even if that peace sometimes arrives in the form of a pharmaceutical sledgehammer that tucks you in whether you're ready or not. So as you settle deeper into your blankets tonight, be grateful for the tiny comforts around you, for the soft hum of your fan, the pillow beneath your cheek, the fact that your snacks are not the result of a half-conscious pilgrimage through your kitchen. Be grateful for clean sheets, steady footing, and the ability to wake up tomorrow in the same clothes you fell asleep in, unless, of course, you're into that kind of mystery. And maybe, just maybe, send a quiet thank you into the universe for all the people who struggled their way through nights far heavier than yours, wrestling with medication, exhaustion, anxiety, and the universal human desire to simply rest. Because history may be uncomfortable, hilarious, and occasionally filled with tranquilizer-level sleep aids, but it's also proof that people are stubborn, hopeful, and endlessly creative in their attempts to survive the night. Sleep well, drift softly, and may your dreams be peaceful and snack-free.